Welcome to 1984 Lore, the channel for all things 1984, and today I'll give you a personal rundown of 5 great jobs within the 1984 universe. This is a list based on the lore and common sense, though obviously great will likely be a matter of perspective for each entry. I've tried to keep entries restricted to one class or two in this video to avoid it becoming solely an inner party video for obvious reasons. So let's get to it. 5 great jobs in the otherwise grim reality of George Orwell's dystopian world. Number 5. ThinkPol Agent. So we begin with an obvious entry that may have come to many a mind watching. To many, if not most folk, the idea of being a fully paid up agent of the Thought Police is not something to be sought or proud of, though it's important to consider these roles within the universe itself. It's hard to imagine even the likes of Winston not, even if momentarily, envying the relative freedom and power that comes with being a ThinkPol agent. By agent, I refer to a dedicated member of the Thought Police, rather than a simple associate or other useful idiot. While not specifically mentioned in the book per se, it's very likely the numbers of agents are few compared to the supporting associates. An associate, as I use the term, could be anyone from the non-ThinkPol civilian police and patrols, the guards of inner-party residential areas and members, the ministries and such, while also covering prol and outer-party assets, those individuals directly tied to the ThinkPol while not being formal members. A popular theory, for example, is that Julia herself is a spy. While I don't subscribe to the theory myself, the point here is to suggest that such individuals almost certainly exist. Using attractive men and women as honey traps is common throughout history and an obvious tool for the effective ThinkPol agent. However, such individuals are not full members of the Thought Police, but examples of associates. The benefits of being a ThinkPol agent in particular are clear. Wide sweeping powers within your province. Within their area, that is, the broad remit of discovering, monitoring, entrapping and detaining thought criminals, these men and women have a wide latitude of action and access to resources, likely using state-of-the-art technology, as well as having an unusually broad access to true, that is, real information on their subjects as well as society in general. This information access aspect of their job, to my mind, must necessarily be true. Given to be as efficient and effective as they are as a collective, accurate information about the real state of their world is needed. While ThinkPol agents must also necessarily be among the most fanatical adherents of the party and Big Brother, they are also vastly powerful and feared if unseen individuals in their own right. Charrington's appearance at Winston's arrest attests to the influence and fear a single agent can invoke, even the black uniformed enforcers becoming subdued and fearful in the presence of a member of the Thought Police. Number 4. Inner Party Servant. So this pick may be somewhat controversial, given we can consider this both as a good and bad position in different ways. I think this depends on the origin and nature of the individuals recruited to become servants. Just to clarify that I am referring to the white-jacketed servants that, according to Goldstein's book, are assigned to assist and serve inner-party members. On the bad side of things, being the servant of an inner-party member is likely good or bad, depending on the individual one is assigned to. Do the personalities gel? Can the servant quickly hack the mindset, preferences and personality of their mistress or master? If so, their service may be long and, if not pleasant so much, then at least tolerable. For example, though his attitude towards Martin may simply have been yet another layer to his act put on for Winston and Julia, O'Brien's demeanour towards his own servant Martin seems at least neutral, perhaps even affectionate in a formal kind of way. Being assigned to a particularly fastidious or incompatible master or mistress would likely spell death and obliteration, and so the role of inner party servant may perhaps not be such a great gig in this scenario. However, if we remain positive and assume most servants are not stupid and desire to fully adapt to and synchronize with their charges, then this role has great benefits and may even be profitable, the position also holding a power of a kind in the indirect influence it holds and the obvious protection it could bring. It's my personal opinion that servants must be either proles or foreigners, though I don't want to elaborate on this here, as I have already done a dedicated video on this subject. Either way, to be plucked from either life to become a servant of one of Oceania's elite can only be a quantum leap in both material benefit and status. On the more obvious level, servants will certainly be better fed and provided for, their quarters necessarily being close to, if not very likely somewhere in the premises of their charges. Even the most basic quarters we can imagine must be way cleaner, safer, and spacious than any prole digs. On a more subtle level, even the servant of the least of the inner party will clearly have a high status among proles, which is what they're technically classed as, given they're certainly not party members. Imagine being O'Brien's servant and being known just by your white jacket, if not your face. Within prole areas, such a man or woman would likely be deferred to, able to easily pass through patrols, be done favours, and have many other privileges, I expect, which are simply unknown to any ordinary prole, or even most outer party members. I can't imagine, for instance, that any grunt policeman would want to obstruct, or worse, detain a servant, given they are almost certainly acting on the orders of their inner party master or mistress. It would only take a word of explanation that it was Officer Plod that prevented them from getting that important item that was requested, and poor old Plod would disappear into a work camp, or worse, into the depths of the Ministry of Love. Consider too the servant's obvious role as a connection between the elite and ordinary worlds. Those servants who are particularly effective and skilled at building relationships with their charges could wield huge amounts of indirect influence and power that arguably falls outside of even other powerful individuals, like high-ranking outer party members, or even agents of the Fort Police. A carefully chosen word or two in the ear of their master, a smile or nod of approval perhaps. Maybe there are even some who assist in more complicated work, perhaps assisting in writing up and keeping notes, research and such. It's likely this is out of their remit a bit, but it's fascinating to imagine some servants actually reaching de facto high positions of power in oceanic society. Much like lobbyists in our world, it would hardly be surprising if servants of particularly prominent inner party members were not themselves courted, even if subtly, as a way to gaining some influence over or access to these top-tier party members. A final perk is in their economic benefits. This is actually a more solid area of the law, given Julia does say to Winston that servants tend to pinch coveted items and are therefore the source of a lot of black market inner party goods, like the real coffee, tea, jam and bread that Winston and Julia enjoy in the novel. This must be a highly tempting side hustle for those particularly brave and skilled servants, but if successfully achieved, could prove very lucrative, perhaps making the most successful servants relatively wealthy in oceanic society. Number 3, RecTep employee. So hear me out with this one. It may be difficult to accept any role in the outer party as great, but as promised I wanted to at least have one entry for each class of oceanic society, and with the highly oppressed and brutalised outer party, I think Winston's job is actually pretty good. Winston, as most of you will undoubtedly know, works within the records department in the Ministry of Truth. He basically adapts public records to the current party truth, helping to maintain a continuous and infallible present in which the party and Big Brother is always right. Now, I get that for many this can seem a horrible job, being forced to constantly lie both to the masses and even to yourself in a way, to knowingly help your oppressors oppress the memories and minds of your fellows. However, for a more orthodox party member, the process does have its enjoyment. Remember that Winston himself has an ambivalent attitude towards his work. He both loves and hates it. Given his own innate curiosity and obsession with the real past, he he obviously hates the fact he is a cog in the machine that abolishes the true past he so longs to connect with. However, Winston also freely admits too that his greatest pleasure in life was his work. For the intelligent and creative mind, Winston's job is actually pretty great, with some assignments, as Winston himself demonstrates with the case of Withers, there is a decent challenge, sufficient to test one's creativity and knowledge of the principles of INGSOC. Even the unorthodox Winston derives satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment from completing such tasks. Aside from the challenge and enjoyment certain intellectual types get from the role, it must also give such men and women a certain sense of power in itself too. As a RecDep worker, you are literally reshaping history to how you see fit, even wiping prominent figures from history itself and inventing individuals that will authentically exist as much as Julius Caesar or Charlemagne, as the novel puts it. It would be a bit like yours truly being given the task in our society of expunging particularly well-known politicians or celebrities from all records. Imagine working on such an assignment and knowing your work is directly responsible for, say, removing any public mention of a minister or president. You would have that power, which in a world in which the average outer party member is largely impotent, is no small thing. I think even Winston himself, who actively hates his society, would have to admit that he does get a kick out of having this small power. To remove important men and women from the records, while creating new faces and histories from his own mind, and knowing he is literally creating the history that everyone must accept, must be a unique pleasure that makes this job great. Number 2, Ministry or Inner Party District Guard. So I'd like to caveat here that I'm specifically talking about non-Ministry of Love guards. I say this as not everyone in the society will have sadistic tendencies, and if particular individuals who work as guards in Millilove do, it's still undeniable that such work as an enforcer within Millilove must involve some very dark deeds that must be psychologically damaging over the long term, if you get my gist. Like servants, this role, especially if posted to relatively safe areas, such as inner party districts or in the other ministry buildings, is probably very cushy indeed. Since most proles live in crushing poverty and disease, to find yourself patrolling the halls of the ministries, or perhaps better yet, the spotless and spacious apartments of inner party members, is certainly a few steps up the social ladder in my opinion. These men will clearly enjoy regular pay and accommodation, two privileges that at once set them apart from their peers in their class. In a similar manner to servants, though to a lesser degree and in a different way, guards also have a prestige, status and influence of a kind too. Just as proles look twice at the blue overalls of a party member when they show up, perhaps the average prole also thinks twice when spying the black uniform of a ministry or residential guard. While not having the direct connection to inner party members that a servant may have, their positions in themselves give them obvious avenues to exert an influence of their own, perhaps getting rid of troublesome individuals at the behest of a relative or maybe some injured group. It's not impossible to imagine one or two guards using their positions to unperson an enemy or two. Another plus to the position of guard in particular too is that you serve close to the comrades of the party themselves. This perhaps has a prestige in itself. Imagine a local prole boy being able to boast he regularly protects Comrade O'Brien himself while he does his important work in exposing and rehabilitating thought criminals. Remember that it's likely most proles are either apathetic or mindlessly supportive of Big Brother and the party, so there is likely a grim pride in working as such an enforcer of the party. For a humble prole, then, few positions in life have such benefits and status. Number 1. Minister of Love. This entry is perhaps the most obvious one and arguably the best job in Oceania, bar Big Brother himself as the supreme leader. So why do I pinpoint a minister, and in particular the Minister of Love, as opposed to the big man himself? If I have to choose, then surely Big Brother's job as the head of state and supreme leader of Oceania is hands down the best job, even better than a minister, you would have thought. Well, to be honest, I've not been shy in my past videos in saying that I'm not sure Big Brother even exists. To look at this debate on the surface, you would think this is a highly contestable subject, but I believe based on the law evidence, it's very likely BB doesn't exist. Though this is wordplay, O'Brien all but admits BB doesn't exist when Winston asks, directly connecting BB to the party, saying if the party exists, then so does he, and that BB can never die. I've already delved into this subject in an earlier dedicated video, so I don't want to go further down this particular rabbit hole, if just to say that here I assume BB doesn't exist, and so his role in our consideration is irrelevant. I do believe that real ultimate ruling power probably resides in the hands of the 4 ministers of state. Of course, I assume here that if Airstrip 1 has 4 ministries, then it follows it has 4 ministers that oversee them. As an inner party member, an individual has already hit the proverbial jackpot in oceanic society, these men and women possessing power and privilege in a different universe to mere outer party members and proles. However, as with any body of people, even the relatively few millions of the inner party of Oceania, it's inevitable that some will be more equal than others, and undoubtedly a minister will far outrank even the average inner party member in terms of status and power. As the Minister of Plenty, for example, you in theory control the economy of one of the world's superpowers, or at least partially so in conjunction with your fellow ministers in other provinces. I personally think it's likely that a level exists above this provincial ministerial level too, some top-level inner party members operating at a supranational level, a kind of King of Kings position. However, this is further speculation on my part. Sticking to the ministers, it's not hard to see how heading up a ministry gives one immense powers within their province. The Minister of Plenty, for example, is the equivalent of the Chancellor of the Exchequer or the Secretary of the Treasury, though actually much more powerful given the command economy of Oceania. The Minister of War is presumably the highest-ranking military official of the province. The Minister of Truth, basically a Goebbels type of figure with complete discretion to warp reality to suit the needs of the party. And finally, and perhaps most coveted of all, the Minister of Love, being the province's chief policeman and head of the think pole. For pretty obvious reasons, it's probably safer to occupy the last role before any other. As Minister of Love, you would in theory control the fort police, guards and civilian police. At this elite of the elite level of oceanic society, such a position is likely the most coveted to protect oneself and to also eliminate rivals. High-level politics in any system in society is always cutthroat, and in Oceania's case, this is likely quite literal. We know for certain that purges in the past and present occur. Jones, Aronson and Rutherford were purged in the middle 60s, having been former leaders of the party. Infamously too, Goldstein himself had been driven into exile as an early rival to Big Brother, that is, if the party history is to be believed. Comrade Withers, a prominent inner party member and head of a group called FFCC, had also been purged. One theory Winston had was that he was simply becoming a bit too popular for Big Brother's liking, but this probably translates to his being targeted by other prominent members as a threat, perhaps even by one of these ministers. As Minister of Love, you enjoy a particularly powerful position, able to strike at your rivals, perhaps having the fort police gather dirt on them and then strike to eliminate them before they can act against you. The head of Mini-Love, then, will always be the most feared and arguably powerful man or woman within their province, and it's therefore no wonder then that the Minister of Love is the greatest job on our list. So there we are, 5 great jobs in the world of 1984. I understand there are potentially many I've missed, so why not post your own pics in the comments section? What job would you want if you had to choose? If you like this subject, then let me know, and I may do another video on 5 more great jobs, or perhaps cover the worst jobs in 1984. Please drop the video a like, as that really helps the channel grow, and subscribe to help keep 1984 lore out of the YouTube memory hole. Thanks, and remember, Big Brother is watching you.